An alpha who doesn't know what power smells like is either lying or about to start. I know, poetic for 7 in the morning on a construction site, but that was literally my first thought when I saw him. The yard was already awake and yelling. Metal clanged against metal, rebar screeched, the air tasted like dust and welding fumes. Cement grit crunched under my boots as I moved along the scaffold, checking the guys' harnesses and pretending my coffee hadn't died 3 hours ago. Below, the crew buzzed louder than the drills. Not the usual Monday morning complaint buzz. This was sharper, curious, excited in that someone's getting fired or promoted, and either way we want front row seats way. "He's here," someone yelled from the ground. "The new owner." "Of course he is." I sighed, tugging my helmet down a little tighter and glancing toward the entrance. Corporate usually came in 2 types: soft-handed ghosts who never left the office, and paranoid control freaks who thought a hard hat made them one of the boys. The SUV that pulled up was glossy enough to reflect half the city. It did not belong in this yard. It might as well have had "I have never stepped in mud" written down the side in gold. "Showtime," Lance muttered into his coffee below me. I looked down. Lance, our foreman, stood there in his faded jeans, work boots, and a black t-shirt that said in big white letters, "Don't ask." His hair was in that permanent state between bedhead and I fought a crane and lost, and he wore the expression of a man who'd seen too many change of management emails and survived all of them purely out of spite. Beside him, near the welding station, Mira pushed her protective goggles up into her shock of bright, uneven hair. She whistled low when the SUV door opened. "Well, damn," she said, loud enough for half the yard to hear. Money does come with legs. The guy who stepped out looked like he belonged on the cover of some boring business magazine. Tall, strict lines to his shoulders, spine's worth of posture. Light hair that was styled, actually styled, like this was a boardroom, and not a place where stray sparks tried to set you on fire for fun. His suit wasn't a full suit. Someone had told him to dress appropriately for sight, so he had dark slacks, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up twice, and a high-visibility vest that had clearly never met dirt in its life. The boots on his feet were new. I could practically hear the leather sobbing about it. He scanned the yard once with cold, assessing eyes, then started walking, not stomping, not striding like an alpha claiming territory, walking like someone who'd practiced it in front of a mirror. Exactly the right pace. Exactly the right angle of chin. Exactly the right degree of relaxed shoulders. Effortless, if you didn't know what to look for. I braced a hand on the rail and drew in a slow breath, letting his scent cut through the metallic tang of the morning. Alphas had weight. Their scent rolled, layered, heavy, like heat off asphalt. Even when they tried to hold it back, it was there. Dominance threaded through spice or wood or clean musk. This one didn't. There was something there, sharp, restrained, but it was thin, trimmed down at the edges. Like someone had taken scissors to it and cut away anything that might spill over. Chemical suppressants maybe, or grafted hormones. Underneath the faint alpha front, though, I caught a flicker of something else, softer, familiar in a way that made my back tense without meaning to. "No way. Is that him?" Mira shouted up to me. "Jay, that's your new boss. Look how shiny he is." "Stop undressing him with your eyes," Lance told her. "You're gonna scratch the polish." I snorted under my breath and turned back to the guys I was checking. "Harness is good," I said. "Clips too. Don't trust the new beam until I say, okay?" They nodded, glancing past me toward the ground where the new owner was now talking to Lance. A few other betas drifted closer, pretending to move pallets and cables while clearly angling for a better view. Yeah, we'll be careful," one of them muttered. "Hey Jay, think he's gonna try to optimize workflow?" I smirked. If he says that phrase out loud, we're dropping a brick. By accident? That got a few tired laughs. Good. Nothing calms a crew like shared sarcasm. I should have gone down. That's what a proper Omega boss would have done. Made nice, looked cooperative, stood there quietly while the new Alpha pissed a circle of authority on the dirt. But I'd been on this site longer than any of their emails had existed. I wasn't about to scramble just because some new owner stepped out of a pricey car. Let him come to me. And he did. I didn't see the exact moment he spotted me, but I felt it. His gaze pinned me up on the third level of scaffolding, like a nail through paper. I looked down and met his eyes. Cold gray, polished stone. And behind that, something that looked too much like calculation to be genuine. Our stares locked. The yard noise faded in that annoying cinematic way my brain does when it decides we've hit a turning point. His pupils narrowed, then widened again, just a fraction too fast. Recalibrating. He said something to Lance. Lance answered, shrugged, gestured up toward me with his coffee cup like a lazy pointer. The new owner, Kane, if I remembered the briefing email correctly, spelled like pain with a K, headed for the scaffolding. Uh-oh, Mira sang. Dad went to get the belt. I rolled my eyes, but my muscles tightened anyway. As he reached the base of the scaffold, he paused, looking up at the network of planks and steel like it offended him personally. Then he started to climb. If I hadn't already decided I was going to dislike him, I would have given him a point for that. Most alphas in his position would have yelled for me to come down instead of dirtying their new boots. But as he went up, one hand on the rail, his steps were too careful. Counting distance, testing, not the instinctive body awareness of someone born to physical spaces like this. He moved like a man who knew the theory of height and gravity, not the practice. He reached my level, exhaled once, measured, quiet, and squared his shoulders. Are you... Jay? His voice was smooth. Not deep chest rumble, not nasal. Pleasant, practiced, another piece of the costume. Depends who's asking, I said. A flicker in his jaw. He did not like that. Kane Hart, new owner. You got the memo? Might have used it to level a table, but sure. Below us, someone coughed to hide a laugh. Kane's gaze flicked downward, then back to me. Up close his scent was a little stronger, but not by much. A faint, dry wood note, laid over something I couldn't name. Clean. Too clean. Scrubbed. His eyes tightened slightly, and I could almost see the invisible weight he tried to drop over the platform. That alpha pressure people talk about. All dominance and command supposed to make omegas drop their eyes and betas straighten their spines. It hit me. Wrong. Not like a wave. More like static. A thin charge along my skin that fizzled out before it could do anything. I raised an eyebrow. He blinked. For a fraction of a second, surprise cracked his calm. I'd like you to come down, he said, the words clipped. An omega shouldn't be up here. It's dangerous. Ah, there it was. I smiled, slow and sharp. And you should. His nostrils flared. I'm responsible for this site. I need you where I can see you. Not, he glanced pointedly at the open air behind me, dangling over a drop. Relax, I said. I've been dangling over drops longer than you've owned those boots. He took a breath and tried again, doubling down. Mr. J, it's a safety issue. You can't expect me to allow an omega. There it is again, I cut in. Like it's a job title. His jaw set. It's your designation. And yours? I asked, shifting my weight just enough to make the plank creak. His shoulders tightened automatically. File that away for later. Owner? Boss? Alpha? Guy who almost tripped on the third rung? I let my gaze drop pointedly to his boots, then back up. Here's the thing, I said. You want to talk safety, fine. We'll talk safety. But don't blame the harness when it's the person wearing it who doesn't know where to step. There was a beat of stunned silence. Somewhere below us, Mira let out a quiet, ooh. Kane's composure wavered again, then snapped back on like a switch. He stepped closer, invading my space in a way that would have sent most omegas back a foot on reflex. I held my ground. His scent pushed with him, that same threadbare dominance humming at the edge of perception. It tugged at my nerves, but not in the way it should. It was missing the depth, the weight, the center, and under it, there it was again, that too familiar undercurrent, a flinch, buried deep, a flavor I knew because I'd lived it in myself and seen it in too many others standing, in too many queues, waiting for their names to be called in too bright offices. My pulse spiked, but not from submission, from recognition. I don't know how it worked under the previous management, Kane said. Quietly, eyes locked on mine, but on my site, I set the rules. And I don't want you up here, and I don't want a stranger telling my crew what they can or can't do before. He's even learned where we keep the spare bolts, I answered, just as quiet. Looks like we're both disappointed. Something flickered across his face. Not anger this time. Fear. He masked it, fast. If I hadn't been looking straight at him, I might have missed it. The guys below shifted. The wood groaned. A truck backed up somewhere with a long, piercing beep. Normal sounds. Normal day. Except my skin was buzzing, and my brain was lining up details like nails on a board. Thin aura. Suppressed scent. Practiced posture. That one slip of fear when I didn't move the way he expected me to. This wasn't just some rigid alpha with outdated ideas about omegas. This was someone wearing an alpha like a suit. I leaned back a little, letting the distance stretch between us again, and gave him my most neutral, professional smile, the one that said, I'm done playing for now, but this isn't over. Welcome to the site, Mr. Hart, I said. You'll find I don't break easy. His gaze lingered on my face for a long, heavy second, before he finally stepped back, and started down the scaffold, shoulders even stiffer than when he'd climbed up. As he went, the scent he left in the air unraveled just enough for me to be sure. This alpha is a fake. The only question is why. If Kane thought yesterday was a fluke, he made sure to correct that misconception first thing this morning. The planning meeting, usually a fast, half-asleep shuffle through assignments, and safety reminders, felt more like walking into a courtroom. The container's metal walls trapped every sound, amplifying the shuffle of boots, the rustle of papers, and the quiet, anticipatory whispers of the crew. I walked in last, not because I was trying to be dramatic, but because I had to stop Mira from welding her glove to the table again. It only happened once, she insisted, popping her gum as she tossed the glove aside. You make one mistake with a torch and suddenly you're a safety hazard. You set the table on fire, I reminded her. A small fire, a polite fire. I didn't dignify that with a comment. Instead, I pushed open the door to the planning container. The crew fell into a hush. Kane stood at the front, tall, crisp, shiny as yesterday. He'd traded the white shirt for a dark-fitted one today, sleeves rolled up again, vest immaculate. Again, Betty had a dozen of them. He looked at me the way someone looks at a loose wire, mildly displeased and anticipating a shock. Good, he said. Everyone's here. Lance slurped his coffee with enthusiasm that bordered on threatening. His t-shirt today said, Yes, I'm tired. No, IT's not going to GET better. Let's begin. Kane picked up a stack of papers and started handing them out. I took mine. Read it. Felt my eyebrows start to climb toward the ceiling. This couldn't be real. But oh, it was. Kane cleared his throat. Effective immediately, we will be tightening protocols to improve workflow and safety. A ripple of dread ran through the room. Beta workers exchanged glances. Mira mouthed, Here we go. Kane lifted a sheet of paper like it was the 10 Commandments. Rule 1. Omegas are not permitted to assign tasks to betas without alpha oversight. Several guys coughed to hide a laugh. I didn't bother. Rule 2, he continued. All daily reports will go through me for approval. Lance muttered, loud enough for the room to hear. Guess we're never going home again. Kane ignored him. Rule 3. No one, especially Omegas, is to access scaffolding without my explicit authorization. He looked straight at me on that one, meaningfully, like he expected me to flinch, or nod obediently, or melt into a puddle of submissive compliance. I smiled instead. Kane's jaw ticked. Before he could launch into the rest of his manifesto, I raised a hand. Just to clarify, I said, folding the papers neatly. These rules are supposed to apply to this site, yes? Correct. And you want them enforced today? Yes. Immediately? Perfect. I nodded. Then we have a few minor issues. He stiffened. Issues? A few. I repeated in my calmest, most professional tone. For example, regarding Rule 1, I tapped my badge, clipped to my vest. According to corporate designation, I'm the shift supervisor. Legally, that gives me authority to assign tasks to betas without needing alpha oversight. Your rule contradicts my contract. He blinked, once. Hard. Behind me, Mira whispered, "Oh, someone's about to fly, and not off the scaffolding." I continued, "As for Rule 2, reports were already submitted to corporate last night, filed and timestamped. If you want to overwrite that system, you'll need software access you don't have yet." Lance whistled low. $100 on Jay, he announced, not even pretending to whisper. Never bet on a man who's blinking that fast. I looked Kane dead in the eye. "And Rule 3? No scaffolding without your authorization?" "I already have written authorization from the previous owner. It's still legally active until you revoke it in documentation. Paper documentation, in triplicate, with signatures from operations." Kane just stared at me. Not angry. Not yet. Confused. Like no Omega had ever spoken to him like this. Like no Omega could. His aura slammed forward suddenly, probably without him meaning to. A shove of dominance meant to make the room hush and the world tilt. Except, it didn't land. Well, it landed, but wrong. It came out thin, sharp, almost flickering, like someone trying to turn on a lamp with faulty wiring. A few betas shifted uneasily, reacting to the static. But that was all it was. Static. An alpha's aura should have hit like a push of heat, a heavy hand on the back of the neck. This wasn't that. It was the exact kind of shaky, unstable pulse you get when an Omega tries to imitate dominance. When the body can't produce the depth, the weight, the instinctive command an alpha is born with. I watched it ripple around me in a weak wave, losing strength before it hit the far wall. Then it fizzled out completely. Kane inhaled sharply, shoulders stiffening, eyes darting over the room like he was trying to figure out why his power hadn't worked. I didn't break eye contact. Slowly, I leaned one elbow on the table, casual as a sunlit cat, and spoke into the stunned silence. "Was that supposed to do something?" A few workers choked on their own spit. Mira covered her mouth, eyes sparkling. "Oh, he's gonna die." Kane's jaw locked. "You're being insubordinate." "I'm being accurate." He tried again. Another pulse of dominance. This one just flickered like a sad neon sign before sputtering out. Lance nodded to himself. "Yep. Never bet on a new boss. Especially one who can't even aura properly." Kane turned toward him sharply. "Excuse me?" Lance shrugged, unbothered. "Just calling what I see." Kane stared at him like he couldn't understand how someone wasn't afraid of him. Then he turned back to me. His eyes were colder today, but underneath the frost, I saw something else. Unease. Not anger at being challenged. Fear of being seen. He didn't know what I'd noticed. Not yet. But he knew I'd noticed something. And that terrified him more than anything I could have said. By the time the meeting broke, he was still watching me. Frustrated. Confused. Like a man holding a mask that didn't quite fit anymore. And I walked out knowing this for certain. Kane wasn't just a fake alpha. He was terrified someone might prove it. The morning heat settled between the shipping containers like a living thing. Humid and metallic. Narrow walkways ran between them, all shadows and echoes, perfect for thinking or brooding, depending who you asked. I wasn't brooding, I was analyzing. There's a difference. Kane's scent had been bothering me since day one. It said alpha on the surface, dry cedar, clean edge, a practiced steadiness. But beneath that, layers that didn't belong there. Soft notes, faint traces of submission triggers, the ghost of an instinctive flinch. Not beta, not alpha. Omega. Which made no sense. You can suppress scent with chemistry. You can reshape hormones with enough money and desperation, but you can't erase the body's oldest habits. Not completely. Not ever. As I walked through the narrow metal path between containers, those conflicting notes hung in the air like a secret waiting to be confessed. From ahead I heard voices. 2 betas moving crates. "Boss looks pissed today," one whispered. "Makes sense," the other answered. "Jay chewed through all his rules yesterday. Yeah, well, he shouldn't pick a fight with a shift supervisor. That's just stupid. I smirked to myself. Betas talk loud when they think alphas aren't listening, or when they don't consider the new alpha a real one yet. I stepped out of the shadows and nearly ran into Kane himself. He froze mid-stride, just as I did. Up close, without the noise of the crew or the shield of authority, he looked different, tight around the shoulders, too aware of the space. And when his scent brushed against me with an accidental shift of air, there it was again, Omega undercurrent, panic-laced, fast-fading. His eyes flicked to me, and then away. Too fast, too sharp. "Jay," he said, voice strained. "A word. Morning to you too," I replied. He inhaled through his nose, as if steadying himself. "Walk with me." He didn't wait for a reply, just turned sharply and headed toward the stairs that led to the makeshift office tower of containers. I followed, mostly because I wanted to see how much more he would reveal without meaning to. Halfway there, he muttered something under his breath. Quiet, but not quiet enough. "Redistribution is..." He cut himself off so abruptly he almost choked. My steps slowed. Redistribution. The word slammed into me like a dropped beam. No alpha used that word. Ever. It belonged to state programs where Omegas were reassigned for optimal placements. It was the vocabulary of training centers, clinics, bureaucrats, and survivors. "What was that?" I asked lightly. Kane didn't look back. "Nothing." "You misheard." I definitely did not mishear. At the top of the stairs, he stiffened and gripped his wrist, thumb and forefinger pressing the tendons. A self-soothing motion, the exact kind Omegas learn in crowded training rooms when they're told to stand still and be quiet. I'd seen it more times than I wished I had. He dropped his hand the moment he realized I was watching and opened the door to his office with too much force. "Inside," he said. Ah. So this was going to be the discipline talk. Fine. I stepped in. His office was clean, metallic, and looked like it had been arranged by someone who couldn't decide if they wanted to live here or hide here. Blueprints stacked too neatly. A single plant that was definitely dying. A desk that had never known clutter in its life. Kane closed the door behind him. Too quick. Too sharp. "Sit," he said. "Pass," I answered. "Jay." His patience cracked like ice under weight. "Your behavior yesterday was unacceptable." "No," I corrected. "Your rules were unacceptable." "My behavior was educational." His eyes narrowed. He stepped closer. Then he made his first real mistake. He reached out and grabbed my sleeve. Not hard, not aggressively, but in a way that made my entire body go still. His fingers closed around my forearm with the same exact grip instructors in Omega centers use when they reposition. Someone during drills, thumb on the inside, pressure on the tendon, control disguised as guidance. A touch he should not know. A grip he should not remember. My blood ran hot in an instant. Kane must have noticed my reaction because he blinked and tried to tighten his aura again. Bad call. The air crackled weakly, but instead of dominance, it was thin static, Omega static, fizzling out before it reached my skin. I slowly pulled my arm out of his grasp. Deliberate. Controlled. "Don't do that," I said quietly. He swallowed. I was establishing authority. "No," I said, stepping closer. "You were mimicking something you don't understand." A flick of real fear crossed his face. I kept my voice calm, even, sharp as a nail. "Next time you want to correct my behavior, try something that wasn't taught in an Omega compliance class." The silence in the room tightened. I watched him breathe. Too shallow, too fast. I watched him steady himself. Too practiced, too familiar. And suddenly everything lined up. The scent, the static, the slip of terminology, the grip. He wasn't just a strange alpha. He wasn't an alpha at all. Kane turned his face away, jaw clenched, mask slipping at the edges. For the first time, he looked less like a polished executive, and more like someone terrified the lights would expose him. I stepped back, letting space open between us, and walked toward the door without waiting for dismissal. As I reached for the handle, the thought settled in my mind with the clarity of sunrise. He wasn't just pretending to be an alpha. Kane Hart had once been an Omega. Or maybe he still was. By lunchtime the next day, The crew had turned the entire construction site into a betting arena. Not for safety violations. Not for project deadlines. No, for us. The moment I stepped into the workers' cafeteria, a long metal container filled with folding tables, plastic chairs, and the smell of chili someone had accidentally burned again, I felt 50 pairs of eyes shift in my direction. Someone whistled. Someone else called, "Jay, what's the spread today?" I blinked. "The what?" Lance lifted his coffee mug. Today's shirt read, "My patience ran out yesterday," and pointed at a whiteboard near the microwaves. A literal whiteboard, with columns and betting odds. Will Jay put the new boss in his place again? By 3 p.m., 5-1. By end of day, 3-1. Unexpected death match, 20-1. Will the new boss finally snap? Throws clipboard, 10-1. Yells at an inanimate object, 4-1. Cries in the porta potty, 301. "Stop adding that," Lance yelled from across the room. Mira slid up beside me with her lunch tray, grinning like the devil. "We updated it this morning. It's already getting traction." I stared. "You made a scoreboard?" "No," she corrected proudly. "We made a totally legitimate morale-boosting competition about workplace dynamics. You are all insane." "Love you too, boss," she chirped. Then her phone buzzed. She tapped something quickly and held the screen up to me. A group chat, with a banner image of fire emojis and wrestling gloves. Omega versus Alpha, Battle of the Titans. I choked on air. "Mira." "It was either that or JV corporate mascot," she said. "This one won the poll." Before I could argue, the door squeaked open and Kane stepped inside. The cafeteria went silent. Not because he was intimidating, no, because everyone was waiting to see if he'd interact with me. He saw me immediately. He also saw that I was smiling, laughing even. Mira was mid-joke, and I had actually let out a real laugh, the kind that cracked through my ribs light and easy. Kane stopped walking. It was subtle, but he stiffened. Just a fraction. But enough. His expression didn't change. Still cool, still controlled, but something in his eyes flickered like a match in the wind. Jealousy? No, not quite. More like irritation that he wasn't part of whatever made me laugh. He turned away and grabbed a drink from the vending machine with slightly more force than necessary. Mira elbowed me. "Ooh, someone's ruffled." "Stop instigating," I muttered. "I will never stop instigating." Later that afternoon, I crossed one of the high scaffolds, the 10-meter, drop yawning beneath me like a reminder to keep my harness tight. It was windy, the kind of wind that whistles through the steel frames and sends dust spinning. Kane climbed up after me. There was no reason for him to be up here. No clipboard, no inspection, just him, and the tension between us humming like exposed wires. "Jay," he said, stepping onto the same platform. I didn't turn. "If you're here to give me another rule, take a number. You've been openly undermining me. You've been giving me things worth undermining." His jaw clenched. "We're going to have this conversation properly." He pushed his aura. Harder than before. And, oh no. It didn't hit like an alpha's dominance. It didn't even hit like a beta's attempt. This was a different frequency entirely. A trembling, misplaced hum. The exact vibration that happens when an omega tries to mimic the weight of an alpha. Too thin. Too sharp. Wrong. I exhaled slowly, then finally turned to face him. We were close. Too close. "Careful," I murmured, leaning in. Just enough so no one below could hear. "You keep pushing like that, and you're going to out yourself." His eyes widened. Real panic. Not the polished reaction of an offended alpha. The raw, instinctive fear of someone who'd spent too long hiding the truth. He stepped back, breath catching. But there were workers below, glancing up occasionally. If they saw him shaken like this, whispering with me on a scaffold, everything he'd built would crack open. Without thinking, I moved. One step forward, blocking him from view, my body angled between him and the crew below, shielding his expression, hiding the tremor in his posture. Nobody saw, nobody heard, only us. Kane stared at me like he couldn't understand why I'd done it, and why the gesture hit him like a lifeline thrown into deep water. You. His voice broke for half a second before he forced the edge back into it. You didn't have to. I know. Silence pulsed between us. Not hostile. Not sharp. Something else. Something fragile. Something dangerously close to trust. Wind whistled through the steel beams above us. I held his gaze just long enough for him to steady himself, then stepped. Back. Casual, nonchalant, as if I'd merely adjusted my footing. He straightened his shoulders and followed suit, mask sliding back into place. But the moment lingered. The tremor in his scent lingered, and the realization settled deeper into my chest. Kane Hart wasn't just a man pretending to be an alpha. He was a man terrified he wasn't doing it well enough. The sun hung high over the site, turning every metal beam into a slow-cooking grill. Most alphas I'd worked with would have used the heat as an excuse to hide in their offices, sending orders through radios or interns. But not Kane. Not today. I stood on the upper scaffolding, checking safety clips, when I spotted him below. Not observing, not pretending to observe. Actually working. His shirt was sticking to his back, dust smudged across his vest, hair no longer meticulously perfect. He was lifting rebar with the betas, helping maneuver a panel into place, steadying a beam despite the sweat running down his temple. He wasn't doing it gracefully. He wasn't doing it like someone who'd grown up on sites like this. He was doing it like someone trying really, really hard. And for some reason, that sight tightened something in my chest. Mira climbed up beside me, voice bright. Boss, your rival is doing manual labor. Should we be worried? Only if he starts enjoying it, I muttered. He does look like he's trying too hard, she said, like he's auditioning for a fitness commercial. Stop watching him. Then stop watching him first. I didn't answer. Because she was right. Later, I crossed the rooftop of the stacked container offices. The sun was brutal up here, but the breeze helped. From the edge, I could see nearly the entire site, cranes swinging, sparks flying, workers shouting over machines. And there, below, Kane again. He'd pulled a younger worker aside, a kid barely 19 who still fumbled with half the equipment, and corrected his grip on a tool. Gently, patiently, not alpha patiently, human patiently. I felt myself soften despite everything. The kid bowed his head in thanks. Kane nodded awkwardly, like praise was a language he hadn't mastered. He looked up then, straight at me. For a moment we just stared at each other over distance and the roar of machines. No hostility, just curiosity, recognition, maybe even something like respect. I turned away first. My heartbeat was doing stupid things. The real shift happened underground. In the generator basement, the loudest, darkest part of the site. I'd gone down there to check a wiring issue and found Kane already crouched by the panel with a flashlight. He glanced up when I approached. You're early, he said. You're in my way, I countered. Move. He did. But not before he watched me kneel beside the panel and flick a switch off with practiced ease. There was a pause, thick and thoughtful, before he spoke. Why are you so against me? I didn't look at him. Who said I'm against you? You challenge me in front of the crew. Don't give me things worth challenging. He exhaled sharply. Jay. I finally looked at him. His face wasn't cold now, or rigid. It was tired, frustrated, and something softer beneath it. Why are you against me? He repeated, quieter. The echo of sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. I sat back on my heels. The shadows flickered over his face, thrown by the growling generators. Because, I said slowly, you're playing a role that doesn't fit you. His breath hitched. I didn't push. He didn't deny it. Instead, he looked down, fingers curling against his thigh, pressing the same spot on his wrist he always touched when stressed. Omega reflex. Deep-rooted. He opened his mouth, maybe to protest, maybe to confess, when a loud metallic clang reverberated through the basement, like someone had dropped a steel pipe directly above us. Kane flinched. Not the alpha kind of flinch, a forward-driving, adrenaline-loaded jolt. No, he flinched inward. Shoulders pulled tight, breath caught, heart jumping visibly beneath his shirt. Pure Omega response. Instinctive, uncontrolled. He froze when he realized I'd seen it. His eyes snapped to mine, wide with something dangerously close to panic. I acted before he could spiral. I reached out casually and flicked the panel again. Yeah, that pipe's been loose for weeks. Scares everyone. Even Lance. Don't worry about it. His shoulders slowly eased. The panic faded. He let out a shaky breath he probably hoped I didn't notice. But I did. Every second of it. Still, I let him believe he'd hidden it. Because whatever he was fighting inside himself, he didn't need me cornering him. Not like that. Come on, I said, rising. Help me with the wiring diagram. We'll get this fixed before the backup kicks in. He blinked at me, confused, almost relieved. And then he stood beside me. Our shoulders brushed in the cramped space. Neither of us moved away. For a few minutes we worked silently, handing tools back and forth, checking the panel, sharing the narrow sliver of light from the flashlight. No arguments, no power struggles. Just two people, breathing the same dusty air. No words. But something shifted, and when we finally climbed back up into the sun, I knew it was true. We weren't enemies anymore. We weren't allies, exactly. But something had cracked open between us. Something fragile, something real, and neither of us dared name it yet. The wind was stronger than usual that afternoon. High up on the platform, 4 stories above ground, steel beams humming faintly. Beneath our boots, it felt like the whole site was exhaling through its teeth. The sky was a flat, white glare. The sun hit the metal so hard the air shimmered. Kane stood near the edge, hands braced on the guardrail, back bowed ever so slightly. Not enough for someone else to notice, maybe, but enough for me. He was unraveling. Piece by piece. I'd watched the signs all morning, the way he double-checked simple measurements, the twitch in his jaw. Whenever someone addressed him as Sir, how he flinched when a crane hook clanged against a beam. His control was slipping, and he looked like a man terrified of his own shadow. I approached him quietly, boots thudding on the plank. Kane, he didn't look at me. The wind scattered his scent in sharp, panicked bursts, like static in a broken speaker. Alpha on the surface, Omega underneath, torn between signals. Jay, he said, voice low. Go work with the welding team. I'll handle. No. That got his attention. He turned, eyes gray and strained. No? He repeated. We're talking, I said. Now. His throat worked. This isn't a good time. Exactly why it's the right time. For a moment, I thought he'd tell me to leave. Order me. But he didn't. He just exhaled, slow and tense. We weren't alone enough. The platform was high, but not isolated. Workers moved below us like ants, voices rising and falling. One wrong cue and the entire site would have front row seats to Kane's meltdown. So I tilted my head toward the narrow walkway built under the steel canopy, a half-hidden pocket wedged between beams and tarps, drowning most noise in industrial clatter. A place only supervisors ever used for private arguments and quick smoke breaks. Come on, I said. Before you shatter right where you're standing. He didn't fight me this time. He followed. Inside the covered alcove, the world muffled into a warm, vibrating hum. The metallic ceiling absorbed our voices. The tarps flapped softly. No eyes, no ears. Kane stood stiffly in the middle, arms crossed too tight, shoulders locked. Like if he didn't hold himself together, he'd splinter. I leaned against a beam, studying him. Tell me what's going on. I said. His voice cracked, then steadied. I said, I'm fine. That's the worst lie you've told all week. His jaw clenched. Jay, You don't understand. Then make me understand. Silence. The kind that burns. His breathing was uneven again, barely noticeable, unless you'd spent years decoding Omega signals the way I had. His pupils were too wide, his posture too defensive. His scent kept collapsing into Omega notes before he forced it back up. like a wave trying to be a wall. He was losing the battle. Kane, I said quietly, you're not an alpha. He flinched, like I'd struck him. Not physically, emotionally. His eyes darted away, panic flickering across his features before he shut it down. He turned toward the tarp, as if ready to bolt right through it. I don't know what you think you... Stop. I stepped closer. Stop hiding. It's killing you. His breath hitched. The tarp rustled. The hollow booming of machinery filled the space around us. Then, finally, he sagged. Just a fraction. Just enough. Like a tower losing one critical bolt. His voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. I was an Omega. The words collapsed out of him, ugly and raw. He didn't look at me. He stared at the floor, fingers gripping the railing until his knuckles blanched. Not just any Omega, he continued, swallowing hard. Registered one, property of the state. I was placed into the redistribution program when I was 18. My chest clenched. Redistribution. A cold, bureaucratic machine dressed up as social structure. A place that decided who Omegas belonged to, where they lived, who they served, why, I asked softly. He let out a harsh laugh, not bitter, self-destructing. Does it matter? He said. Too soft, too obedient, too ideal. They said I'd be best utilized under a higher status alpha, that my temperament was a desirable resource. He spat the last word. I was trained, conditioned, assigned. My stomach twisted. This was the truth behind his perfect posture, his clipped tone, his haunted eyes. What happened? I asked. He shook his head slowly, hair brushing his face. The veneer was cracking open. I ran, he said. I stole my file, took what little money I had, disappeared, and I found someone who knew how to alter designations, erase data lines, rewrite registry tags. It cost everything. He pressed a trembling hand to his wrist, the same spot he always touched when anxious. That's why I'm an alpha on paper, he whispered. Why my scent is wrong. Why my aura is broken. He swallowed hard. And why if anyone finds out, I lose everything. The company, my freedom, maybe even my life. The last words were thin, fraying. I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of it settle. Kane, I said, stepping closer. Look at me. He didn't. So I reached out and gently tipped his chin. His eyes lifted, stiff, brittle, terrified. The mask was gone. This was the real man beneath it. Not an alpha. Not a role. Just Kane. I'm not your enemy, I said quietly. I never was. But stop thinking my place is under your boot. I've never stood there. I never will. Something in him stuttered, like a skipped heartbeat. He blinked. Once. Twice. His gaze softened. Not in submission, not in fear. In relief, in recognition, in something that looked dangerously close to trust. The air between us shifted. No static, no dominance, no roles. Just two people sharing a truth too heavy for daylight. His voice, when it finally came, was quiet. Then, what am I supposed to do? I met his gaze steadily. Start by being who you actually are. For the first time, Kane didn't flinch. He breathed. A full breath. A real one. And in that moment, everything between us changed. The change between us was subtle at first, quiet, almost invisible. But the crew noticed anyway. Betas could smell tension better than wolves smelled rain. The next morning, as I climbed the steel stairs toward the temporary bridge stretching over a freshly dug trench, I heard whispering below. When do you think they'll get together? End of the week. No way. Did you see the way Jay looked at him yesterday? Did you see the way the boss looked back? That man is one accidental hand touch away from combusting. I rolled my eyes so hard I nearly sprained something. On the stairs ahead of me, Kane paused just long enough to glance back with a raised brow. You seem popular, he said. I hate all of you, I muttered. He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was rough, like he hadn't practiced it much, but real. It did something unpleasant to my rib cage. We stepped onto the narrow bridge, just a few sheets of reinforced steel supported by scaffolding on either side. Workers passed us carrying toolboxes and cables, giving polite nods. That turned into not at all polite smirks the moment they walked by. Mira strutted across from the opposite side, welding mask pushed up, eyebrows wiggling. "Morning, lovebirds." Kane coughed and nearly tripped over a bolt. I pretended to inspect the railing, so I wouldn't have to acknowledge anything. "Get back to work, Mira," I said. "Sure," she winked. "Just checking if you two needed a chaperone." Kane looked like he wanted the trench to swallow him whole. We ended up near the metal storage yard later, a tight maze of steel beams, panels, and coiled cables, stacked too high and always 2 seconds away from violating every safety regulation known to man. The chemistry between us was worse here. Worse in the sense that the air felt charged, heavy with things neither of us knew how to name yet. Our banter crackled without the venom it used to have. Kane wiped dust from his hands and said, "If you roll your eyes at me like that again, they'll fall out." "Maybe I'm practicing," I said. "Never know when I'll need to aim them at someone truly deserving." His lips quirked. "You mean, of course. You're my favorite target." He paused. Something warm flickered across his face. But before I could examine it, a shout ripped through the air, a worker yelling something unintelligible. My instincts snapped into place an instant before I understood the danger. A steel beam, one of the heavy vertical supports, had tilted off its stack, slow at first, gathering speed, then falling in our direction with a sickening metallic groan. "Kane!" I grabbed him before he could fully turn. He stiffened, eyes wide. I shoved him hard toward the narrow space beneath one of the low support braces. The beam crashed down behind us with a deafening clang that shook the ground and sent dust billowing through the air like smoke. We tumbled into the cramped space, bodies pressed too close, breath stolen by shock. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. His scent hit me first. Sharp, tangled, confused, that flicker of omega sweetness beneath the thin alpha layer. Close enough now that I could feel the tremble in his chest. I realized my hands were still gripping his shoulders. He realized it too. His fingers tightened reflexively on my jacket, and his breath hitched in the dark, dusty quiet. He started. But his voice faltered. I should have reacted faster. I leaned in slightly. Not enough to crowd him, but enough to make sure he saw my face clearly in the dim sliver of light. "You reacted like a human being," I said softly. His jaw clenched. "I reacted like—" "Don't say it." He swallowed hard. I could feel the fear rolling off him. Not fear of the beam, but fear of what I'd seen. Fear of being read wrong. Fear of being seen right. "I don't want you thinking I'm—" he began, voice raw. "Weak." I finished. His eyes darted away. I tightened my grip just a little, not holding him in place, just grounding him. "I don't see weak," I whispered. "I see you, not the role, not the label, just you." His breath shook, slowly, painfully. He let his gaze rise to meet mine. The closeness between us cracked open something vulnerable, something fragile he'd been, holding behind steel walls since the day he killed his own identity to survive. For a moment, I could almost hear his heartbeat above the fading echo of the falling beam. The air was thick with dust and warmth and tension, our faces inches apart, lips a breath away from— Someone shouted from outside, "Everyone alive in there?" Kane jerked slightly, startled back to reality. I shifted, giving him space, and crawled out from under the beam first. He followed stiffly. Workers gathered around, checking for injuries. Mira clapped Kane on the back. "You good, boss?" "Jay saved your pretty face, huh?" Kane coughed out something like a laugh, cheeks flushed. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Because he looked at me once more, quick, soft, deeply shaken, and I knew he'd felt it too. The honesty, the closeness, the terrifying unspoken shift building between us, and for the first time, he didn't hide from it. The sight changed at sunset. During the day it was all noise and chaos, shouting, grinding metal, sparks flying like angry fireflies. But at dusk, everything softened. The machines quieted. The heat lifted. The sky turned molten orange, and poured light through the exposed steel frame of the upper floors. Up here, on the skeleton of what would eventually become an office level, the wind blew steady and warm. The city sprawled out beneath us, lights flickering on one by one. Kane stood near the edge of the frame, one hand on a vertical beam, watching the horizon like it was a question he didn't know how to answer. I climbed up behind him, boots clanking on steel. "You're avoiding me," I said. He didn't turn, but his shoulders tensed for a moment before he forced them to relax. "I'm not avoiding you," he said quietly. "I'm avoiding myself." That was new, and not a lie. I stepped beside him, leaving half a meter of space. Not touching, not crowding, just close enough to be understood. The wind tugged at his shirt. His hair looked less styled, more human, and the sunset made him look fragile, not weak. Fragile in the way a truth is fragile before it's spoken. Finally, he looked at me, gray eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "Jay," he said, "I don't know who I'm supposed to be." I waited. He swallowed hard. "When I ran, when I bought the documents, when I became this." He gestured vaguely at his own posture, his scent, the whole constructed image. I thought being alpha would fix everything, that it would protect me, make me untouchable, make me someone no one could order around or take away. The wind carried the admission out into the open steel around us. But now? His voice cracked, raw. Now I don't know if I'm supposed to be an alpha, or something in between, or nothing at all. He looked down at his hands that still trembled faintly when he was overwhelmed, hands that were strong in their own way, even if he didn't believe it yet. "I feel like a fraud," he whispered. "Every day. With every breath." For a long moment, I didn't speak. The silence wrapped around us, heavy and honest. Then I stepped closer, close enough that our arms almost brushed. "One thing you need to understand," I said, my voice low but steady. "Status doesn't make you strong." He blinked, startled. I held his gaze. "Strength is a choice you make every day you keep going, every day you refuse to let the world decide what you are." His breath hitched, just slightly. "You think choosing to run wasn't strength?" I asked softly. "Choosing to survive? Choosing to build a life they said you couldn't? That's more strength than half the alphas I've met will ever have." He stared at me like he was hearing something impossible, like the words didn't fit the shape of the wounds he carried. The last bit of sunlight slid across his face. He whispered, "You make it sound simple." "It isn't," I admitted, "but it's real." Our hands, not touching, not yet, hovered inches apart on the railing. The wind nudged us closer. Metal groaned softly beneath our boots. Kane looked at our hands, then at me. Not above me, not below me. For the first time since the moment he stepped onto this site, he looked at me on the same level. Equal footing, equal ground. The tension between us was thick enough to taste. He exhaled, long and unsteady. "Jay, what do I do now?" I let my fingers drift just a little closer. Not touching, just letting him feel the warmth, letting him choose. "You stop pretending," I said, "and you start deciding." He stared at our almost touching hands like they were a lifeline. The silence that followed was deeper than any conversation we'd had. A silence that said everything neither of us knew how to say out loud yet. Kane didn't pull away. He didn't mask himself. He didn't hide. He just stayed there beside me, breathing in the sunset, seeing himself, maybe for the first time, through something other than fear. And I felt it as clearly as the warm metal beneath my palms. This wasn't a truce. This was the beginning of something honest, something dangerous, something real. The central yard of the construction site was usually loudest in the morning, machines roaring, metal screaming, crews yelling over drills. But today, the noise felt different, thicker, heavier, expectant. Word had spread fast. The director of the parent company was visiting, along with the same inspector who'd pushed Kane to the edge 2 days ago. Never a good combination. I stood near the stacked pallets, wiping dust from my gloves, when Mira sprinted over and skidded to a stop. "They're setting up some kind of platform," she said breathlessly. Like a stage. Like a firing squad, but corporate. I groaned. Fantastic. Jay, she added, eyes wide. They asked Kane to stand on it. That froze my stomach. A stage. A spotlight. A public evaluation. No Omega, X or otherwise, survived that unscathed. I dropped my rag and started walking. Fast. The makeshift stage was a tall shipping pallet reinforced with steel plates, placed right in the middle of the main yard. Workers circled it, pretending to look busy while blatantly watching every second. Kane stood on top. Too still. Too rigid. Mask perfect, but stretched thin. The director, a tall, severe man with the posture of someone who bench-pressed paperwork, stood beside him. The inspector smirked from the ground, holding a tablet like a loaded weapon. All right, the director said, raising his voice. We've reviewed the quarterly reports and conducted internal checks. However, his gaze tightened on Kane. A matter has been brought to our attention. A concern about your designation records. A ripple went through the crowd. The inspector stepped forward. According to the registry, Mr. Hart's Alpha designation contains discrepancies. It may, in fact, be fabricated. Workers gasped. Quietly, but not quietly enough. Kane went pale. Not visibly. Not dramatically. But I'd learned to read even the smallest signs. His breathing shortened. His hand twitched toward his wrist, then stopped halfway. Panic. Held by a thread. And that thread was going to snap. The inspector lifted the tablet. We have reason to believe Mr. Hart's status was illegally altered. That he was previously assigned to... That's enough. My voice cut through the yard like a blade. The crowd turned. I stepped forward, boots loud on the concrete, climbing the stage with no hesitation. I stood beside Kane. Close, deliberate, a united front. I wasn't sure who was more shocked, the inspector, the director, or Kane. Jay, Kane whispered. You don't have to. I do, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I faced the director first. You want an assessment? Here's one. This man, I jabbed a thumb toward Kane, is the reason this site is 2 weeks ahead of schedule. He's the one who climbs scaffolds at dawn, fixes busted equipment with his own hands, and works alongside us, instead of barking orders from an office. A murmur rolled through the crowd. I turned slightly toward the inspector, voice sharpening. You want to question his designation? Fine. But understand this, on my site, he's the one holding half the damn place together with grit and stubbornness. If you're hunting for weakness, you won't find it here. The inspector's face reddened. The director looked conflicted. The crew? They erupted. Yeah. Tell him, Jay. Mr. Hart saved my hide last week. He knows every bolt on this place. Somewhere, Mira yelled, I'll fight anyone who tries to take him, to which Lance added, same, but only verbally. And reluctantly, the director raised his hands for quiet. Surprisingly, the crowd obeyed. He studied Kane for a long moment, long enough that I could feel Kane trembling ever so slightly beside me. Then the director said, Mr. Hart has produced excellent results. The team clearly respects him. That matters. He shot a glare at the inspector. And unless you have irrefutable proof of wrongdoing, I see no reason to remove a functioning site manager. The inspector spluttered. But, enough, the director said. This evaluation is concluded. He turned and left as abruptly as he'd come. The inspector followed, fuming. I exhaled slowly, tension unwinding from my muscles. The crowd cheered, loudly. Kane didn't move, not until the workers drifted away, back to their tasks, still buzzing with gossip and excitement. Then he finally looked at me. Jay, he whispered, voice breaking. Why did you... I stepped closer. Because you deserve better than being torn apart for surviving, I said. His breath shook. Something warm flickered in his eyes. Something soft, unguarded, terrifying in its sincerity. He swallowed hard. Jay, my place... I didn't let him finish. Because he didn't need to. He took a breath and said it anyway. My place isn't under someone's boot, he said quietly. And it isn't above anyone either. His gaze locked onto mine, steady, sure. My place is beside the one who helped me find myself again. The words hit me harder than the falling steel beam last week, and they settled somewhere deep, somewhere dangerous, somewhere right. Before I could answer, Lance hopped onto the edge of the stage, arms spread wide like a ringmaster. Attention! He boomed. The site-wide betting pool is now officially closed. Groans and cheers erupted around us. The final result, Lance continued, is love, teamwork, and bonuses for everyone who didn't bet against them. The yard exploded with applause, whistles, and laughter. Kane let out a breathless laugh, his first real one. And I couldn't help smiling back. The roof of the new building wasn't technically finished, but that didn't stop us from sitting on it like we owned the whole skyline. The metal edge was warm from the day's heat, the wind soft enough to ruffle hair but not enough to steal your breath. Behind us, the smell of fresh paint clung to everything. Ahead, the city lights flickered awake one by one. Kane and I sat side by side, legs dangling over the edge, boots tapping the steel beams below in uneven rhythm. For the first time since I'd met him, his shoulders weren't stiff. No mask. No posture. Just him. He leaned back on his hands and watched the sky slowly shift from orange to violet. Then, with a small, almost shy smile, he said, "So, tell me, Jay, where's your place now?" I snorted softly. "Definitely not under anyone's boot." He hummed. "Good." A pause. "What about next to me?" I turned my head. The city reflected in his eyes, bright and soft at the same time. I drawled. "We'll see. Depends how you behave." His mouth twitched like he was trying not to grin, and failing. Before the moment could deepen into something dangerously honest, a shout echoed up from below. "Hey!" Mira's unmistakable voice. "If you two are making out up there, we want details," Lance added, "preferably with diagrams." Kane groaned into his hands. I laughed. Loud, full, unrestrained, and then I felt him looking at me again. Not the uncertain, braced look he used to wear like armor. A real look. Warm. Open. Almost free. He leaned in slightly, hesitating just long enough for me to lean too. Our lips met. Gentle at first, then warmer, slow, steady. A kiss that didn't demand anything, didn't prove anything, just existed. Quiet and right. Below us, someone wolf whistled. Mira yelled, "Finally!" Lance shouted, "Pay up, everyone!" Kane pulled back with a breathless laugh, the first I'd heard from him without fear stitched into the edges. I rested my forehead against his, feeling the wind wrap around us like a promise. Some places you're pushed into, some you fight your way out of, and some you choose, and the best ones are the places you choose not just for yourself, but together,